Welcome to part 4 of this Blender tutorial series where we're creating this Boeing-Stearman Model 75 biplane airplane. If you haven't seen the previous parts, you can definitely check out the tutorial playlist linked in the description. So in this part, we are going to be modeling the legs, which the wheels connect up to. We're going to be modeling the shock absorbers and the wheels and also the hubcaps. And if you're interested in purchasing the tutorial project files, you can get that with the links in the description. And when you purchase the project files, you'll get the finished 3D model, all the textures and the resources, and the final renders. And then one more thing before we start, I want to let you know about a really great Blender add-on for easy, fast texture baking. Oven is an amazing Blender add-on for speeding up the baking process. Start by UV unwrapping your objects. You can then select the objects that you want to bake. You can then choose what maps to bake, like the color, roughness, normal, metallic, and more maps. Then choose your preferred settings, like where to export the textures, the file name, file type, and texture size. Then hit bake, and the add-on will automatically bake all the textures and export them to your computer. Then click the Recreate Materials button, and the add-on will automatically replace the material with a new material using the bake textures. You can find my full add-on review video with the link in the description, and by purchasing through my link, you'll be helping to support this channel. So let's now model the landing gear struts, or the landing gear legs, which are going to connect the wheels to the body. So we'll go to the add menu, and I'm going to add a cube. Let's bring the cube down, and I will go into edit mode and bring it over, and we'll scale it down a bit. And then we can add the mirror modifier so it mirrors over to the other side. Now let's go to front view, and I'm going to scale this piece in a little bit, and let's rotate it and bring it up here. And we're just going to fit it. If we go into wireframe, we're going to fit it there to the reference. So let's bring this part in, and we'll select this part and bring this part in, and maybe bring the entire thing up a little bit. Let's box select this piece here, and we're going to bring it right there inside the body and bring this part back and up and inside the body. And let's add a loop cut right here. So add a loop cut, and we're going to bring this in a little bit and bring this in a little bit, and these parts can kind of come out a little bit. So let's go back to solid view and kind of see how that's looking. And I think the entire thing could be brought down a little bit. And if we select these vertices, let's bring that up a bit. Now if we go to side view, you can see they're way too far back. They're going through the wing. So let's just drag this over here. And then in edit mode, we can go to wireframe and we can scale it down a little bit so it's more thin, so it fits the size of it. Now if we go to the face select, we're going to select this face and we can bring it out a little bit. And then also let's go to the edge select and we can select this edge and bring this out a little bit. Just like that, and maybe bring the entire thing back in a little bit. And we're also going to bring it back slightly. Just like that. So now it's going there into the body. Now in edit mode, I'm also going to add a loop cut right here just to give it a bit more geometry, and then we're going to give it a subdivision surface modifier, and we're going to shade the object smooth. So then back in edit mode, we can go into the inside. Let's actually go into local view real quick. And so in local view, we can select these two faces and just delete the faces. So if we go out of local view, you can see now that's a lot more sharp because there isn't that face there. Let's hide the mirror modifier, make it smaller, and we want to make sure that the render and viewport levels are both set to 3, so it's pretty detailed. So now what I want to do is make the endpoint be really sharp, but then this part out here is going to be more round. So to make this part sharper, let's just go to the vertex select, and we're going to select these 3 vertices right here. So those 3 vertices, and we'll edge slide them into the center. So just like that. Then we're going to select this edge and edge slide that into the center and slide that into the center. And also this one here, slide that into the center. So now we can select everything and we can merge by distance. So now you can see that's quite a bit sharper. So we'll go into wireframe and select this edge and kind of bring the edge back a little bit. So it's a little bit more sharp. So I'm now going to select these 3 vertices on the end again, and to make it even sharper, I'm going to add a bevel, and we're just going to turn up the cut so it's 2. So that way it's going to be a total of 3 cuts, so just like that. So if I go to orthographic view and kind of zoom in here, you can see there's just 3 of them there. So there's that one, then there's the one here on the tip, and then there's the one on the end. Just like that. So now you can see the object is really sharp there on the end. And also let's add another loop cut. We're going to drag this loop cut right down there so that that bottom part is a lot sharper as well. And let's add another loop cut to make it a little bit sharper. That's looking a lot better. So I now want to duplicate this loop, and we're going to make the second part of the legs. So in edit mode, we're just going to select one of these loops. I'll just select this one. Let's go to front view, and we're going to duplicate it, and then we're going to separate it into its own object. So back in edit mode into the new object, let's scale it down slightly and bring it up here inside the other object. And then we're going to extrude it out, and we're going to bring it way down just like that. And just select it and scale it down a little bit more and make sure it just fits right here. So you might need to select this loop and scale it down a little bit more just so it fits inside that other piece. So we kind of have that little lip there from one piece to the next piece. And let's also shade this piece smooth. And we also need to select everything and recalculate the normals because there was a little issue there. You can kind of see there's a glitch there in the shading. So just recalculate the normals and that should fix it. So let's go to side view now. We'll go into edit mode and you can see it gets a little bit thinner as it goes down. So we're going to add a loop cut right here. And then if we box select these two sides and also this here, let's just drag this back a little bit. And then box select that part and drag that back a little bit, just so it gets a little bit thinner as it goes down. All right, that's looking better. So then right down here on the bottom, we're going to select these vertices and we're going to fill a face and also fill another face. And then right in here, select these three vertices and fill a face there. And then we can add a loop cut. So we'll drag a loop cut right down there just to sharpen that up. And then if we go to the face select, we're going to select these two faces and we're going to inset the faces just like that. So that way this part is really sharp. That's looking a lot better. So we'll select both of these objects and we're going to move them into a new collection. And we'll rename this to front wheels and click on create. So we'll put all of the wheels right here in their own collection. And let's rename these objects. So the first one is going to be landing gear upper struts. And then for the second one here, this one is going to be renamed to landing gear lower struts. So we have the upper struts and the lower struts. So I now want to create the shock absorbers. Now to model the shock absorbers, if I go to front view here, you can see they're kind of rotated sideways, but it's going to be a lot easier if we model it straight up and down and then rotate it after. So let's just go to the add menu and I'm going to add a cylinder. And on the add cylinder settings, let's turn the vertices to 32. Let's go back to front view and I'm first going to drag the object down here and then in edit mode I can bring it over. Now let's scale it down a bit and scale it up on the z-axis. So we're just going to be modeling it going up and down and then we'll rotate it later once we've finished all the modeling. So let's zoom into the object. We'll go into edit mode and I'm going to add two loop cuts. We're going to add one loop cut right there and then another loop cut right up there. So now go to the face select and select this face and we're going to extrude it, but then we're going to scale it along the normals and we're just going to drag this down like that. And then maybe if we select everything, let's scale it, but we're gonna disable the z-axis. So hit S to scale, shift Z to exclude the z-axis and just make it a bit thicker. So now let's go to front view and we're going to add a couple of loop cuts. So we're going to add two loop cuts here and maybe scale them down so they're a little bit more thin. And then we're going to add two more loop cuts right here. So just add two. We'll scale these down so they're about the same thickness and we're going to drag this right up there. Let's now go to the add menu and we're going to add a new cylinder. And let's drag the cylinder down here and we're going to rotate it by 90 degrees on the X. We'll scale it down. And then we're going to drag it just right over here. Let's make it a bit smaller. And we're going to make this cylinder be a little bit smaller than both of these loops. So just like that, because this is going to be used to create a hinge. So let's zoom into it and let's scale it out a bit on the y-axis. Let's scale it down so it's even more thin and then bring it out just like that. So let's duplicate the cylinder. We'll scale it down on the y-axis and then we'll scale it up a little bit. Just like that, scale it up a little bit. So we have a second one. And what we're now going to do is select all the faces on this half side. So select all these faces, go to the face select, and just select all of these faces. And you can go to front view and just make sure you've selected all those side faces. So I need to select that one as well. So on front view, you can see we have half of them selected. We're now going to extrude this out like that, and then we'll scale it on the x-axis by 0 to flatten it. Then let's go to top view and let's go into local view and we're going to scale it down so it gets thinner as it goes back in like that. So what I now want to do is go to the face select again and we're going to box select all of these faces right here. So just select all of these faces over here on this side, just like that. And we're going to duplicate them and move them over and let's scale them along the X by -1 so it's flipped. Let's go to top view and bring it over. And then we can scale it down a little bit on the Y, just like that. And now what I want to do is go to the face select all these faces on the inside, and we're going to select these faces here, and also these faces here, and we're going to delete those faces. So now we'll select everything, and we're going to merge by distance. And you can see since these were really close to the other ones, it just merged together. So now we can select that entire loop and fill a face there, select that entire loop there, fill a face there, and then if we select everything, we need to recalculate the normals. So we're going to now select this top face here, and we're also going to select the bottom face. Let's go to top view, and we'll go to wireframe, and we're going to inset these faces just so they're small enough, and maybe drag this back a little bit, just like that. So I don't want them to overlap the hinge. And let's now delete the faces. So now I can go to the vertex select. We're going to select these vertices and fill a face there and fill that there, and then just fill all the faces all the way around. That way it's hollow inside. So let's go to front view again, and we'll go back into edit mode. And we're going to select this entire piece here, and we need to make it a bit longer. So first let's just box select the front piece, and we're going to bring it out a little bit. Then we're going to select the entire thing, and we're going to rotate it, and let's just bring it right down here. So rotate it and bring it down, just like that. And then we want to duplicate this piece, bring it down, and we can rotate it, we can stick it right up here. So we're going to make these two pieces connecting just like that. So make sure those two circles connect up, and then this piece is going to connect down here. So as you can see, we need to rotate it and move it back up a little bit and bring it forward a little bit. So like that, rotate it and bring it up a little bit. And then we can just select this piece and we can rotate it and bring it up a little bit like that. Now you can see these are overlapping, and that's not what we want. So let's select this entire piece, but then in wireframe, we're going to deselect the back. So we're just going to select the front, and we need to make this bigger. So let's scale it up just like this so that we can kind of make two hinges, an inner hinge and then a wider hinge. So now let's deselect everything, and we're going to select this piece, and we're going to hide this piece so we can kind of see this better. So I'm now going to add a loop cut right here in the center. Let's go to top view, and I'm going to drag this over here and make it so it just basically overlaps that vertice. Add another loop cut right here. We need to scale the loop cut on the y-axis by 0, and then we just need to drag it over here so it overlaps this one. So now we'll select everything, and we're going to merge. We're going to merge by distance. You can see it's gotten rid of 4 vertices. So now I can go to the face select. We're going to select these faces. So just select the faces in the center, and we'll delete the faces. And these faces here, delete that. And these faces here, delete that. So now you can see there is an opening. So now what we can do is go to the vertex select. We'll select the vertices there, and we're going to fill a face there. And we'll do the same thing here for the other side. So now we can hit Alt-H to unhide the other object, and you can see it's still a little bit too wide. So if we select this entire piece, we can then deselect the top, so we just have the bottom selected, and let's just scale it in a little bit, just like that, so it kind of fits. So let's go back up here to the hinge piece, and I want to model some details on the hinge. So let's go to the face select. We're going to select this face here, and let's first bring it back in a little bit. I'm going to go to orthographic view so I can zoom in closer. So now I'm going to extrude it and then scale it, and then we're going to extrude it forward, and then we're going to inset it so it's a bit smaller. Then we'll extrude it out, we'll scale it down a little bit, and then we'll inset it again, and then we're going to extrude that back a little bit. So you can see we have that nice detail there on the hinge. Now let's use the shade auto smooth. So now we need to add this detail to the other side. You can see right here the detail's not there. So if we select this entire piece, we can duplicate the piece, move it over. We can scale it by -1. Let's bring it over here. And now let's select this loop here and this loop here. And we're going to scale them down by 0. And then we're going to delete the faces inside. So let's just zoom into our selection. We're going to select this face on the inside and delete that as well. Then if we select everything, we can merge by distance. You can see it removed 32 vertices to that loop, and then we'll recalculate the normals. Then we can just select that loop there, and we can just hit X, and we can dissolve the edges. So let's now box select this side here, and I can just drag it right in there. We'll go to top view and just drag it right in there. So now we have that little hinge piece. So we'll select the entire hinge piece now, and we're going to move it here and make sure it's in the very center. We're now going to duplicate it, and we're going to move it right down here and put another hinge right there, and then duplicate it one more time and put this one in the very center of that hinge piece, just like that. And then this piece here, it's a little bit too long. So if we go to wireframe, we're first going to drag this part over, and then we can deselect this side and drag the other spot back. Just like that. Now remember how we made these little loops right here? Well, we're going to use those loops to connect these pieces up. So we'll go to the face select, and we're going to select these 2 here, then we're going to select 2 more, and then finally 2 more. So just those 6. And we're going to extrude that here, just extrude that in, and then scale it along the X by 0 to kind of flatten it, just like that. And let's also scale it in just a little bit on the Y axis. All right, so we're going to do the same thing right down here. So we're going to select 6 of them. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and we will extrude these. Then we'll scale them by 0 on the X, and then scale them down a little bit on the Y, just so those pieces connect with the hinges. All right, and that is it for the main shock absorber object. So we can now go out of local view so we can see everything again. So in edit mode, we're going to select the entire object, and we're going to rotate it by -90 degrees. And then back in object mode, let's bring it over here. In edit mode, let's bring it over. And we also need to add a mirror modifier so it's mirrored over to the other side. And let's go to front view. We'll scale this down a bit more and we're going to rotate it over so it has the same rotation as the legs there. And let's go to side view, go to side view there, and we'll drag it back right there so it's in the very center. So now let's model this little cylinder piece, which is going to go there into where the wheel rotates. So we're going to add a new object. Let's first center the 3D cursor. We're going to add a new cylinder. We're going to drag the cylinder down, and in edit mode, let's drag it over and scale it down. And then we can add a mirror modifier so it mirrors over to the other side. We'll rotate it by 90 degrees. We'll scale it down even more, drag it up here, and then make it a bit longer so it goes about into the center there of where the wheel is. Let's go to side view, and back in object mode, we can drag this way over, drag it way over right there, and then we can scale it up to make it a bit thicker so it just connects with the shock absorbers. And in edit mode, we're going to select this loop here and we'll add a bevel to it. And we'll scroll our mouse wheel so there's more cuts in the bevel, and then drag it forward a bit. And then let's go to the face select and we'll select this face. We're going to inset the face a little bit. We're going to extrude it back in, and then we're going to inset it again, and then we're going to extrude it out like that. And then we'll add another little bevel there with less cuts, just like that, and maybe drag that back a little bit. So we have a little inset there. And we're going to use the shade auto smooth so that looks better. And then back in edit mode, we can select this side here. We'll go to front view and just make sure that is in about the center of the wheel. So now let's model the wheel. So we're going to select this entire loop here. We're going to duplicate it. We're going to scale it up. And this way the wheel can rotate in the exact correct position because it's going to rotate where this cylinder is. That's going to be the rotation point. So we're going to separate this into its own object. So now you can see it's its own object. However, if we try to rotate this, you can see it's kind of rotating weirdly. It's kind of bobbing back and forth or up and down. That's because the origin point isn't in the very center. So if we select the entire mesh in edit mode, we're going to use Shift S and we're going to do cursor to selected. So now you can see the cursor is right there. We're now going to go back to object mode and we're going to click on object, set origin, and we're going to do the origin to geometry. So now you can see that when I rotate this, rotate it on the X, it's rotating correctly. But the problem now is that the mirror modifier isn't mirroring over to the other side because the center of the object is right here. So instead of it mirroring by the origin, we can use the object mirror, and we're going to click on the eyedropper and we're going to select the body. So now it's mirroring over to the other side. Let's save our project again. So let's go to front view, we'll go to edit mode, and we'll go to wireframe. And I'm going to drag this back a bit, just like that. Now what I want to do is actually have two mirror modifiers. One mirror modifier is going to mirror it over to the other side of the wheel, but then the other one is going to mirror it over. So let's add another mirror modifier. And for this mirror modifier, we can drag it back so it's at the very starting. And this one is going to mirror on the x-axis. So just to show you real quick, this first mirror is going to mirror it back and forth like that, but then the second mirror is going to mirror it to the other side of the airplane. So now we can just model half of the wheel and it will mirror over. So let's bring the wheel in a little bit, we'll scale it down a little bit, and then we can extrude it out. And let's turn on the clipping and we'll stick it there into the mirror and then scale it up a little bit like that. And then we want to delete the faces, so choose only faces to delete the face in the middle. And I think we might need to recalculate the normals, so that looks better. Let's go back to front view. And we can add a loop cut here, and we can scale the loop cut up a little bit, bring it back a little bit. And instead of using the shade auto smooth, we're just going to use the shade smooth. Let's also hit Ctrl 2 to add a subsurf with 2 levels. And I can bring this back a little bit to make the wheel a little bit thicker. Let's go to the side here, and we're going to go to the face select, and we're going to select this face. And we're going to extrude it back in, and we'll scale it down a bit. And then we'll inset this face again, just like that, and then we can delete the faces. So just delete that face. So now we're going to have that little detail where it goes down and then back in, but then you can see the inside of the wheel is hollow. Let's add some loop cuts. So I'm going to add a loop cut right there. And then let's also add another loop cut right there to kind of sharpen that up. We'll also add another loop cut right there to kind of sharpen that inner spot. Now I want the wheel to be a bit more flat, so let's select this loop here, select this loop here, and select that loop. And we're going to scale all of these. We'll scale them on the x-axis so that the entire side of the wheel looks a bit more flat, and kind of drag it out a little bit. Maybe select that loop and we'll scale it down so it's a bit more flat. And what I'm also going to do is select this loop here and this loop. And in wireframe, I can select that loop, and let's just bring that loop out just a little bit so the wheel is just a little bit thicker. So now I want to add a little bit of grooves to add some grip and detail to the wheels. So let's first add one loop right here and drag it up into the very center, just like that. Then we're going to go to the face select and select this face. So select the face on the inside, and we're going to extrude it and we'll hit escape, and then we're going to scale it along the normals with Alt S. Just scale that down like that. Let's go to orthographic view and zoom in, and if I go to the vertex select and just select that center loop, let's scale it in a little bit, and if we select both of them, we can scale them both in a little bit, just like that. And maybe this part, bring that over. We're now going to add 2 more of these. So let's add a loop cut. We'll drag this loop cut right here. And then we will add a bevel and just scale the bevel up, but we're just going to use 1 cut, just like that. And then we can extrude it. We can escape that. And then we can scale it along the normals with Alt S. So now you can see we're getting those nice grooves there in the tire. So let's create 1 more groove. So let's select this here, scale it down a little bit, and then I can add a loop cut right there and maybe bring the loop in a little bit and scale it up a bit. And we'll go to front view. We're going to add another bevel there, and let's just bring the bevel up like that. And then we're going to extrude it, and then we're going to scale it along the normals. Now you can see if I scale along the normals, it's kind of coming in a little bit instead of straight down. So instead I'm going to scale it, but then I want to exclude the x-axis. So hit Shift X just to exclude the z-axis. So if you scale it and you Shift X, you can see now it's going to scale along the z and the y, but not the x. Just like that, so we have that little groove there. And then I think the entire tire just looks a little bit thin. I think it should be thicker. So in edit mode, I'm going to bring it out, and then we'll scale it along the X, and then just push it back in, but just make sure that that loop there doesn't get merged with the mirror, because I think the tire should definitely be thicker, so that looks better. Let's save our project again. So now what I want to do is create a new object for the hubcaps, but I want to make sure the hubcaps are in the very center, so when they rotate in the correct spot. So we're going to select the wheel, we're going to hit Shift S and do cursor to selected. This way we can add a new object, and we can add a new circle, and the circle is going to be right there in the center. Now before we move the circle around, let's open up the add circle settings, and I'll turn the vertices to 48, and we'll close the circle settings. So we'll go into edit mode, and we're going to rotate it. Let's rotate it on the y-axis by 90 degrees. And then we can just bring it forward a little bit so we can see it better. Let's zoom into the selection, and we'll scale it down a little bit, and then we'll bring it back inside, and then we can extrude it out just like that. So you can kind of see where it is right there inside the wheel. So we'll extrude it, and then we'll scale it down a bit. Then we're going to extrude it back in a little bit. And then we're going to extrude it and scale it again. Then we're going to extrude it again and bring it forward a little bit. So we just have a small lip, extrude it again and scale it down. And then we'll extrude this part way over, right over here, and then just fill a face there. And we're going to move it back pretty far, but not too far. So maybe not quite that far, a little bit back like that. So now I want to add a mirror modifier so it mirrors over to the other side. So let's add the mirror modifier, but then you can see it's mirroring over on this side, and that's because the origin was right there. So we can use the mirror object instead. So on the eyedropper, we're going to choose the body. And this way it's mirroring over on the other side correctly. So let's now go into edit mode and zoom into the object. And what I want to do is go to the face select, and I want to select these 2 faces. Then I want to skip 2 and select 2 more. And we're just going to continue to do this. So skip 2, select 2 faces, skip 2 more, and we're just going to do this all the way around in a pattern. All right, so we now have 2 selected and then 2 not selected. So we're now going to extrude these pretty far back, just like that, to add some nice details to the hubcaps. And then let's also add a bevel modifier. So add a bevel, we'll turn the segments up to 3, we'll turn the amount down to 0, we can close the mirror, and then we'll just turn the bevel amount up by a very small amount, and then we can shade it smooth. And then at the very end here, let's also add a weight to normal to flatten those sharp areas. Now let's also make sure that these objects are all renamed and in the correct collections. So if we box select all the objects here, all these objects, let's move them. We'll make sure they're in the front wheel collection, and then we'll drag this here inside the Boeing-Stearman model. And then let's rename these objects. So this one here, this is going to be front wheel. So we'll hide that object, and then we've already renamed the upper struts and the bottom struts. And then we need to rename this object to shock absorbers. Then we need to rename this cylinder here. So instead of just calling it cylinder, let's call it wheel cylinder. And then let's rename the hubcap. We're going to recall this one inner hubcap, because we're going to have another different hubcap for the outside, but this one's the inner hubcap. So now unhide all the objects. So now let's create the hubcap on the other side. So we're going to go into edit mode of the wheel, and we'll just select one of these loops, and we'll duplicate it and move it out, and we'll separate it into its own object. So now you can see it's its own object, but I don't want to have this mirror on this side. So let's open up the mirror modifier. We're going to delete the first mirror modifier, but we are going to still keep the second mirror modifier. So back in edit mode, let's select everything, and we're going to bring it back in there, and we'll scale it down a bit and then extrude it back in. Let's select that loop of faces there. We can extrude it and scale it down. Then we're going to extrude it back in. We're going to extrude it and scale it. Then we're going to extrude it back out like that. And then we can fill the faces there. And then if we select everything, let's recalculate the normals. And in object mode, we can shade it smooth. Now on the subdivision surface modifier, we can turn the viewport and render levels both to 1 because we don't need a ton of subdivision. But now let's select this face and we're going to inset this face, and we'll inset it twice so it's a little bit straighter there on the end. And then let's also add a loop cut right up here and another loop cut right down there. And then right in here inside that little crease we made, let's add one loop cut right in there to sharpen that up. And there we go, there is the outside of the hubcaps. Now I also want to create 4 little screws or bolts. So in edit mode, we're going to select this face here, and let's duplicate it, and we'll scale it way down, and then we're going to extrude it back in, and we're going to delete the faces. Now let's also select this entire new piece that we added, and we're going to separate it by selection, and we'll just select the new object, and we're going to delete the subsurf modifier, and let's use the shade auto smooth. Then in edit mode, we need to recalculate the normals when everything is selected, just like that, and we'll scale it down and bring it back in there. So now what we're going to do is go to side view, and we're going to bring it up just like that. We're going to bring it up to about there, and then if we go back to object mode, we can duplicate it, and then we're going to rotate it by 180 degrees. Then if we select both of them, we're going to duplicate these objects, and we're going to rotate these by 90 degrees. So now you can see we have 4 of these, and they're all evenly spaced away from the center. So we'll now rotate everything, and we're going to rotate all 4 of these objects by 45 degrees. We can hit Ctrl J so they're all one object. Now let's maybe bring them in slightly so they're just a little bit smaller. So let's rename these objects. So this one here, this is going to be called outer hubcap. And this one here, this is going to be called hubcap screws. So let's zoom into the center here, and we're going to add a few more details here in the center. So let's add a cube. We'll go into edit mode. We're going to scale the cube way down. Let's bring it forward and then scale it down on the x-axis, and we can bring it back a bit. We're going to scale the entire thing up so it's just a little bit bigger than that cylinder there. Then we're going to go to the face select, and we're going to select the face on this edge and also this edge. And we're going to extrude it, and then we're going to scale them both out on the y-axis, and then we'll scale them both down on the z-axis. And let's bring it back in slightly. All right, just like that. So let's now add a bevel modifier. So let's just add a bevel. We'll turn the segments up to 3, and then let's just turn the amount to 0, and then I can just drag the amount out just a little bit. Let's turn the segments actually up to 4 so it's more detailed, and then shade the object smooth. And in edit mode, I'm going to select this entire loop here, and I'm going to add a bevel and just add a few cuts there, just so that that part is a little bit more smooth. And maybe let's turn the bevel amount down a little bit more. And we also need to add the bevel to this side, so we'll select that loop, and we'll add a bevel as well. Now let's also add a mirror modifier to this object. So we're going to add a mirror modifier, but then to mirror it over to the other side, we again need to use the mirror object. So with the eyedropper, we're going to choose the body. So it's over there on the other side. Now, the last thing that I want to do to this little piece here is I want to add a few little bolts in here. So let's center the 3D cursor, and I'll go to the add menu, and we're going to add a cylinder. And then on the add cylinder settings, to make it like a hex bolt, we'll change the vertices to 6. So let's now drag the bolt over, and we're going to drag the bolt down, and we're going to put it in the center there of the wheels. So we'll go into edit mode, and we'll scale it way down. We'll drag it over to this side, and then just like the other objects, we can add a mirror modifier. Let's scale it even farther down and then stick it right over here. We can zoom into it, and we're going to rotate it on the Y by 90 degrees, and we'll drag it up right here. And we're going to have 4 bolts on this side and 4 bolts on the other side. So let's scale that down, and we'll stick that there, and then we'll duplicate this and put one there. We'll duplicate it again, and we're going to put one more right there, and then duplicate again and put one more there. And then just to make it look a bit more random, we can randomly rotate each one of these objects. So we can rotate them on the x-axis just to make them look a bit more random. So now we'll select all these bolts, we'll duplicate it and move it over. We can scale it along the Y by -1, and then recalculate the normals. And then we'll just stick it into place just like that. Let's just check over here to make sure it's mirroring correctly. So I'll rename this object to hubcap bolts. So hubcap bolt. points. Now another thing that I want to do is I want to add a cord or a wire which is going down here, and it's going to go all the way down, and it's going to stick right here into the object. So to do this, let's send to the 3D cursor, and I'm going to add a curve Bezier. So we'll add the Bezier curve, and let's drag the curve right down here into the center, and then in edit mode we can drag it over, and then just like all the other objects, we can add a mirror modifier so it mirrors over to the other side. So let's now rotate it, we'll scale it down, we can zoom into it, and we're just going to stick this first handle here inside this piece. So stick it there inside the leg for the wheels. Then we're going to select the other handle, and we'll just rotate it and kind of have it curve around a bit. We can extrude the handle and rotate it, and just move it over here, extrude it again and rotate it, and maybe bring everything up a little bit because I think it was a little bit too low. And then we can extrude this again, rotate that over, rotate this one over, and this one we can just stick here inside the hubcap. So now I have a little cable which is going down and around there. So now what we're going to do is give it some thickness by going to the object data properties, and we're going to open up the geometry tab, and we're going to go down here to bevel, and we can turn up the bevel depth just like that so it has some thickness. So let's rename this object. We're going to rename this to landing gear cord. And then I want to model one more little detail here. There's going to be a little metal piece. So let's just place our 3D cursor here, and then we can add a new object, and we're going to add a new cylinder. And on the add cylinder settings, let's turn the vertices to like a 16. So it's more detailed. And then edit mode, we'll scale it way down. Just make it pretty small. We'll zoom into it. And let's scale it up a bit, scale it down. And if we go to the face select, we'll select the bottom face. Let's bring it up and we'll scale it down a little bit. And then here on the top face, let's go to orthographic view so we can zoom in a little bit closer. We're going to inset that face, and then we're going to extrude it out. We'll extrude it out again and scale it, and then we'll extrude it up again. Then we're going to inset the face again, and then we'll extrude it out, and then we will extrude it and scale it out again, and then finally we'll just drag this piece right up here or extrude that piece up like that. Now we have that little piece there, and let's use the shade auto smooth. So then in edit mode, we're going to rotate it and stick it right down here, and just stick it inside this cable, just like that. And then for this object, we need to add a mirror modifier as well. So we'll go to the modifiers. We're going to add a mirror modifier. And again, we need to use the mirror object. So we'll use the eyedropper and select the body object. And then we're going to rename this. So I'm going to rename this object to landing gear cord detail. So we'll save the project again, and this will wrap it up for part 4. So thank you so much for watching this part. So in the next part, in part 5, we're going to be modeling the tail wheel and also a few more details. So when the next part is released, I'll have it right up there on the end screen, and the link will be in the video description. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next part.